No, not yet.
Okay. What do I do?
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody at the O. It's a great
Okay.
opportunity to see all of you
Yeah.
here. We have organized a presentation on coronavirus. And the team today I'm going to introduce all of them to you. We've got Reverend John Moy, we've got Dr. Roberts, we've got Dr. Marcelina, and we've got Mr. Rodrigo. So these are the people who will be with us today. I'm very grateful for them to accept to join the MADIO and to do a presentation for us. I'm going to say the same thing in Madi Anzo Kosi, Ulu Endurisi, Anyevokasi, Endo Ba, Evodia, coronavirus ni, la Tuadi Erire, Gerire Dilaru, Ba Endo, get the presentation ready, Badia, Anyinde Totoniti, Awi, Orudi Endo, Elegisi, Reverend Moi Kujobani Elegini, to Adu Dr. Roberts, get the presentation, Bazba Panel Geri, Dr. Maserina P. Roberto, Malaka, Anzo Kosi, the other Karasaku, Akuriki. So, Reverend Moy, you're welcome.
Thank you. My name is John Moy, and I live in Australia. And I wear two hats. One is that I still do my pastoral work, and the second thing that I do is I'm a social worker as well. And so I am happy to join the MADIO to share together on the topic that is before us. But as far as I am concerned, the theme that I have before me is the fact that as Christians, we walk or we live by faith, not by sight. And having said that, let me make an assumption that walking by faith or living by faith or living and not living on sight is not abstract in a sense. It is something that is out of one's experience with God. Once you experience the love of God, the goodness of God in your life, and then it becomes that you live that life out. And so we have taken this verse from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, which reads, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." And of course, there are two words that are used there from different versions. One says walk, another one says live. But altogether, it is just talking about what happens in our lives as individuals and even as Christians. I like the Mahdi translation, and let me read it. Lidri amadi ai anita ndrele misi eko. And so that is a very clear cut. Lidri amadi ai anita ndrele misi eko. And so the life of faith is the life of things that we do not see, but things that we hope for. If we see things, then the element of faith will not be in it because we see it. But if we don't see it, then it helps us as Christians to hope and to keep living that. And so there are three things that I'll outline quickly as to what it means to live by faith or to walk by faith. One, it is only through faith that we can see the impossible become impossible. And the impossible there become possible because of the unseen hand. And the unseen hand there in our life is the hand of God. So that is one. Two, faith leaves room for God to do mighty things in our lives. Or faith leaves room for God's mighty hand to move upon our lives. And so there is that unseen hand at work in our lives. We don't see it, and we hope it is there doing the mighty things in our life. And the third thing is by faith, we do not limit the ability of God to do wonders in our lives. And so even when we have faith, we do not limit the fact that God is working in our lives through and through. And so faith continues to give us hope that God is working in us day after day after day. And so that is what it means for us as Christians to live or to walk by faith and not by sight. Because by faith we allow God to do his work in our lives continuously. And we can be thankful to God that even in the midst of all that has been happening, brought about by coronavirus, you and I are still here. We are living, and we thank God that we are living, and God has protected us from the dangers of this virus, and we believe God will continue to protect us by faith. We are not better than those that have succumbed to it or those that are infected by it. We are not better than them. But this is purely God's grace and mercy in us to keep us still protected from this. And I'm happy to be around to hear from the doctors that are there to explain to us exactly what it is that is in this virus that we have to know and to help us protect or guide ourselves well. And so thank you very much. I am going to pray and then move to the next one. God, we pray for the world in which we live. So much is happening, particularly the bad side of things. For example, the coronavirus that has brought the whole world on its knee. So many people are infected. So many people are dead or succumb to it. And so many people are recovering from it. As we know also, it is still ongoing. And so it is in our prayer that you keep us safe, you guide and protect us. We thank you that, yes, in the midst of all this, we are still here to praise you, to give to you the glory, and to thank you that you are God indeed who is working in our lives. We do not want to take it for granted. We know this is all what you are doing in our lives by faith. Help us to be courageous. Help us to follow the steps that have been provided by the medical authorities so that we keep ourselves safe. We thank you for this meeting. We pray that you will bless all the people that will attend. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you so much. Now, without further ado, I'm going to ask Dr. Roberts to tell us what this coronavirus is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think they would like to echo what Pastor John said. Really, during the Corona time period, we really need to live by faith because, like most of the ailments around the world, this coronavirus is not unknown. So let's dedicate ourselves to God and live uh, by faith. I think with that, we shall be able to fight the challenges that the entire world is facing right now due to coronavirus. My name is Jurgo Roberts Ali Duku. I am a medical doctor by training. I have, for the last 4 years or five now, I worked in South Sudan in Juba in a medical practice. But currently, I am in London for further studies at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And I got invited also to share this message. And I have a short presentation that I would like to preview. Hopefully, this will work. I hope everyone is able to see. So yeah, we are going to talk about what COVID is and how it continues to affect us, and then putting more emphasis on prevention because that is the only thing we can do right now. That is hygiene and washing. So this is not going to go deep into a lot of science. It's basically going to be on the public health perspective, so that we're able to pick what we should know about COVID 19 and how we can prevent ourselves from getting the infection. So let's start by coronaviruses. It is a group of viruses that usually produce symptoms like the common flu, the common cold, including runny nose, sore throat, cough. Sometimes there's difficulty in breathing. They are usually mild. They are viral infections. In most cases, they last about 7 to 14 days, that is 2 weeks. So they are known to be spreading through droplets when they are released from someone's mouth or during cough or during sneeze or even when you're talking. So these droplets can land onto your eye, your mouth, your nose, and is more common, especially when people are in close proximity, when people are compact, when people are closer to each other. So when it came to the end of last year, another group of coronaviruses came in, and that is what we call COVID 19, the new illness that now affects your lungs, your airways. It's also caused by the coronaviruses. So at the end of 2019, COVID 19 got to be known as a new group of coronaviruses, or sometimes also referred to as the novel coronavirus. The researchers are saying that it's close to viruses that are found in bats. In history, we have other coronaviruses outbreaks. For example, the SARS in 2002, that is the severe acute respiratory syndrome, and the MERS in 2012, that is the Middle East respiratory syndrome. And these are all viral infections. Majority of them are mild. For example, the COVID 19 is so mild, and more especially in the young health people. It presents as a mild condition. It takes around 5 days from the, it has a 5 day incubation period from the time when you get the virus to showing symptoms, around about five. Other people might take 7 or even 12 days. And during this incubation period, when you don't show any sign, you're still infectious. That means you can pass this virus to uh, other people. And that is why now we need to protect the most vulnerable people, because if you are in the incubation period, you're able to pass it to people who might experience difficulty with this condition. So as we said before, it spreads by droplets that gets to your eyes, your nose or mouth, through sneeze or onto your hands, or when you sneeze or cough direct onto surfaces like the door handles, or also someone can get it through inhalation in the air, when someone coughs or breathes it, or during shouting or talking into the air. It may be difficult to control yourself from touching your faces. So this is the reason why most countries are emphasizing that we should be able to wash our hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. So hand washing is really, really important because, touching your face is unconscious. You don't have to think that you're touching your face. I remember I recorded some videos and people are like, you're talking about coronavirus and yet you're touching your face. So you see that. And it is so important that we should be able to wash our hands because we do not know when they get onto our mouth, our nose, onto our eyes. So prevention is the most important message. So timeline of this virus, the WHO reported of its occurrence on the 31st of December in 2019, that there were cases of this coronavirus. That time nobody yet knew. And then this virus spread to the rest of the world. As of 11th of June, there were almost 8 million cases worldwide. See that? So this thing spread so rapidly within the last 5 months. It has infected over almost 8 million. And these are people who got tested. They could be other millions that never got tested and they recovered from this. Out of this, around the world, there are already uh, over 4 million who have succumbed to COVID-19. They have died, unfortunately, with around about also 4 million recoveries. Currently, the active cases that are known, that are tested, are over 3 million. There could be other millions that are suffering with the disease, and because they are not tested, they are not included in these statistics. So perhaps millions who recovered without knowing they had the disease, especially those with mild symptoms and those who never got tested for the disease. For our country, South Sudan, sorry, I didn't get the statistics for Uganda. Right now, Juba is the epicenter. A lot of people are already having the disease, and the ones that are tested around about 1,600, over 1,600 people. Those are the ones that are tested. There could be a lot of people who are moving in the streets of Juba unknowingly that they have the disease. So far, 24 deaths that are related to COVID-19. There could be other deaths caused by COVID, but because there was no testing done, it's not known. For now, there are 48 recoveries. I am quite sure there are also a lot of people who have recovered on their own without being tested. So some important facts on COVID-19. So like we had said before, it's mostly mild. And when you look at the statistics around the world, this COVID-19 is mostly affecting the elderly people, the people over 70 years, and especially those with underlying medical conditions. And the younger people are less affected by this. So a lot of underlying medical condition, like in our country, there are a lot of people who do not know that they have these conditions and they are suffering with them, like diabetes, sukaria, high blood pressure, and a lot of them. So we had said before, it spreads by droplets infection, has caused lots of deaths uh, all around the world. So the most important message is on prevention. Strategies for prevention by the governments right now. So because there is no cure, governments all over the world are stressing that we should be able to prevent this. So the governments are trying to contain the spread of the virus through public health measures that we shall see later. Uh, Also, some delay of some other activities. For example, we can delay the spread by closing airport. We have seen that there is no longer rampant travel, and this has really affected the travel economy and other economies around the world, including isolation. If you think you have the virus or when you test positive, you get to isolate yourself. Also, schools have been closed, pubs, churches, funerals, and all weddings, especially places that involves gatherings. So these measures are brought in to delay the spread. So as there is delay to spread the infection, researchers are working very hard to look at possible treatments and vaccinations around the world. I think they're working day in, day out. And actually, if the researchers are able to get the treatment, a definitive treatment and vaccination, this is going to be the ultimate answer, the best answer that we all pray for in order to prevent and stop the spread and provide quick cure to the coronavirus. And we have to mitigate, reduce the impact on lives, because if we are locked in throughout because of coronavirus, I think there's going to be a serious impact in our lives because of corona. It's going to kill lots of people. It's going to, reduce economies. When economies are reduced, people are going to die because of hunger. People hustle daily to provide food on their table. So all that. So these public health measures included cancellations of sports worldwide where gatherings are, are stopped. And aim is to protect the elderly and especially those with underlying conditions. And then the self-isolation is really emphasized when you think you have the signs and symptoms that we're going to see later. You need to isolate yourself, practice social distancing. Most countries are saying you have to be 2 meters away or try to keep yourself inside and only travel where necessary. Closures of school, and most people have been told to work from home. All these are aimed at preventing the spread of the disease because, as we know, there's no cure, and this criminal, this virus, is killing lots of people and destroying economies that have been built for years. And then it has also affected the traveling, of course, now because we have to avoid unnecessary travels, especially the use of public transport in the buses, in those trains, and those planes. So self-isolation is emphasized, especially when you have symptoms of COVID, because COVID symptoms last for 7 days. So isolation is also thought to be for 7 to 14 days. And these symptoms may include fevers, a new continuous cough. If you have never had any cough and you start coughing continuously, you need
Oh
to
my God.
suspect you might have contracted the virus, so you need to self-isolate. You also have sore throat. Uh, like here in the UK, they have found that so many people lost their smell. So if you are no longer able to smell some of the usual things that you used to smell, suspect you have the COVID, so you have to self-isolate. So household members of people who have the symptoms should self-isolate also for 14 days. Uh, you can also call your health authorities. There are COVID response numbers around the different countries in the world. So this varies from one country to another. So if you are unwell, you can try to call. And in most cases, you're not supposed to go to the hospital like in other countries, but you can call and then get advice to either self-isolate or if your condition is so worse, probably the health authorities will send a vehicle and pick you up. This is the case in the UK. It might be different in other countries, like especially in South Sudan. I don't think the authorities have the capacity to really go and pick people who are badly off to hospital. Countries like Uganda have made sure that people who are tested positive are isolated or kept in some other hospital. And that is a very expensive scheme. The good news is in Uganda, Uganda has try to control the spread of the disease to many people. So most countries advise people shouldn't go to the hospital. Those with mild symptoms can take paracetamol at home if you have headache, and when you have shortness of breath, or when you feel confused, dehydrated, or other symptoms that are severe, you can call on the authorities. So the social distancing, as I had said previously, is to avoid the spread in the community. So avoid contact uh, when with people who have high temperatures for now, or people with new continuous cough. Try to avoid non-essential use of public transport. If you can work from home, work from home. But I know with our economies in African countries, you have to go and hustle. So this is a little bit hard. But the countries like Uganda, I think they were able to provide food for communities. I don't know whether that is the whole country. It might be difficult in other parts of the country. In South Sudan, I have not seen the government coming up to isolate people and providing food. That is a different case scenario there. So work from home where possible, and this is not easy, especially in our country with where over 70% or even 80% are self-employed. They work in the informal sector, and they have to hustle daily to provide food on their table. So these working from home is a little bit different. It's a little bit difficult, especially in our context. We have to avoid large gatherings, those funerals, weddings, pubs, churches, those discos. Please try to avoid them. Avoid going to the pubs, restaurants, theaters, and even gyms. I know young people these days want to go to the gym, so be careful. Don't also go to those salons where people sit down, to touch each other. Keep in touch with family and friends by phone. Because if you already shifted from your mother and father, you're not supposed to bring this disease to them, because as we had said previously, this group of our grandfathers, our parents already have weaker immunity if they're over 60. So if we introduce this disease to them, we might lose them. So we have to keep talking to them on phone, use the internet if you're able to, or social media, and try to be 2 meters apart is being recommended. However, also other countries think it is ridiculous to keep people 2 meters apart, so at least maybe 1 meter. So these are the vulnerable groups that we have to take care of: the elderly, anyone over the age of 60 years, and with underlying conditions. Underlying conditions may be heart diseases, lung diseases, including those with asthma, diabetes, people with chronic kidney diseases, chronic liver diseases, chronic neuro conditions, people who are on cancer treatments, taking immunosuppressants, steroids, and more especially in our country, in our African context, there are a lot of people with sickle cell anemia. We need to protect these people. We shouldn't let them roam on the streets. Most of them are young people. You might be thinking they're in the age group that is having strong immunity, but these people have weak immunity, so we need to protect them, as the sickle cell anemia people. And then malnourished mothers, pregnant mothers, and children. These ones have reduced immunity. So if you know these groups of people, try to protect them. If you're a young person and actively hustling to provide food, make sure you're able to shop for these people and deliver them their food to their houses. Let them stay home, let them cook. At least that is better, instead of them roaming in the street or joining other gatherings. I know it's a difficult thing, especially in our country. It's not easy to really self-isolate or keep these people, but let's try our best and also practice the hygiene of hand washing where possible. Let's do that. So you might have heard about flattening the curve, and many of us might not be knowing. So flattening the curve is like, if you can see this screen here, this horizontal line shows the capacity of the health systems in most countries. And because of coronavirus, if there are a lot of people, we may break the capacity of these health systems. That means uh, the hospitals may be overwhelmed, and it makes it so difficult for the health providers to provide treatment to this. So all these preventive measures are aimed at flattening the curve such that the infections are only kept at a level that the health systems is able to contain. The healthcare system is able to to take care of the sick one, because as you have seen, there are a lot of people who require hospitalization, and they need ventilators. So in low economies like our African context, we do have very few ventilators. Our health system is ramshackle. So at least all these measures of social distancing, washing hands, are to make sure that the infection rates are able to be taken care of by the health systems. So important facts that we need to know: this virus has spread from country to country, all the continents in the world, those all over the world. Masks are recommended for now. People should be able to make a cloth-based mask and wear them. This one will be able to reduce the infection rate. Testing currently is recommended, but the capacity in our countries, I think, is so low. So this testing might be not be so much prominent in our country. So we need to avoid the surging numbers of these new infection through wearing masks, social distancing, washing of our hands. So we have to avoid close proximity, being close together. In our cultures, we like to hug, to shake our hands. We have to avoid that. You can start to wave. Let's safeguard individuals with reduced immunity. Reduced immunity are these things that I have mentioned before. We have to reduce our travels, and of course, countries and governments have banned sports, contact sports. People are now playing sports online. So, what can we do to strengthen our immunity? Things that worsen the situation. For example, poor sleep. You need to at least sleep maximally for 8 hours. Uh, Reduce stress. This is a difficult thing, but you should be able to check on your neighbors online, uh, through the internet or through phone call. Check on your relatives, talk to them. At least this will reduce the stress. People are encouraged to drink large quantities of fluids and avoid alcohol. So if you are dehydrated, your symptoms of COVID might be worse. If you drink alcohol, this will worsen your immunity, and it's not good. Things that boost your immunity, like I had said, you need to rest, rehydrate, take lots of fluids, juices, fruits, vitamin D. For our case in Africa, I think this is not much because we do have the sun. So in the morning, if you get out, sit outside and enjoy the sun. In the Western world, where there is a lot of winter, you should be able to take vitamin D supplementation. Supplements, they are also balanced diet. So important measures: if you sneeze, use a tissue and drop this tissue in the bin or burn it, and immediately wash your hands with soap and water, or sneeze into your elbow or your upper arm and wash your hands with soap and water. It's recommended that the water should flow for at least 20 seconds. That will have washed off the virus. So proper hand washing is encouraged. Unfortunately, we are unable to demonstrate this here. Probably, maybe some of the people in the panel will do that. Uh, so avoid close contact with those who are unwell. I know this is difficult to do, but please try our best. Watch out for fevers and tiredness, cough, the difficulty in breathing. When you have muscle pain, watch out for this and try to self isolate. Stay or call for the authorities who may come and collect your samples and test so that you know what you're suffering from. Take home message about COVID for now is mild in the young and dangerous in the elderly, and those risk group that we had mentioned. But this, we shouldn't take this for granted, especially the young people. When they say it's mild for the young, they start exposing themselves. But you might be having an underlying medical condition and you do not know that you have it, and you might die from this. So protect yourself, protect your parents, your grandparents, and every elderly person, and those in the risk group in your communities. Self isolation if you have the symptoms or if you test positive, social distancing for all, especially the vulnerable groups for now. Our lives will be affected for a very long time with this COVID. And as I had said before, the best measure will be when the scientists, the researchers produce a definitive treatment and a vaccine that is tested and proven to be working to prevent the spread of this virus. Cough etiquette is encouraged. Cough onto your elbow where possible, and hand washing is highly, highly recommended. Uh, Hospitals may undergo huge pressure and get overwhelmed from the spread of this virus, the COVID-19. So let's try to uh, prevent social distancing, wash our hands, protect those with underlying conditions. And thank you for listening. This is the short presentation that I had for this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roberts. Um, I'd like to ask people in the panel if they have any comments to make, if there's anything they would like to say, to add. I'd like to give this opportunity to them before I can take questions from the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert, and thank you, our viewers and listeners. That was a very good and comprehensive presentation. Yes, we are trying to define or tell our audience what coronavirus is, and you've very well defined and told us. I just wanted to clear one thing, which is rather bring something to light about the theories that are around coronavirus. People are still wondering what is this coronavirus, isn't it? So you've already defined it, but I just want to look at two theories or two myths rather. The first one is saying that yes, we know that coronavirus originated in December, etc., and we know it originated from Wuhan city, and it was from there that the clusters of infection spread out. But we also do know that these viruses live in the animal. They are zoonotic viruses. So they found their way in the human being. And because they're zoonotic, they can also affect animals. That's why you hear about Nadia. Nadia is not a human being. Nadia is the tiger in the bronze zoo that got infected with coronavirus as a result of the zookeeper very likely having had the coronavirus. So the animals can also get it. You also then come to the second theory. People are asking out there, is coronavirus a bioweapon? What do you think? So as scientists, we would like to have things that are evidence-based. And we do say that some people say it's something that has been human-made or man-made. Others say it leaked out from the laboratories. And some say it's a virus that is engineered to spread in the community or in the human race and bring down the population. So the question again remains, did coronavirus come from the lab? And so far, the answer is no. We don't have evidence of genetic engineering or genetic foul play that took place. So the answer is simply no. We've already talked about the other SARS that broke out, which is very beautifully said. And yes, corona virus is not something to play about because it's been killing and it's still killing quite a lot of people. And very beautifully, you talked about the measures for preventing the coronavirus. coronavirus. I would just like to look at this into rather define what the social distancing is, which you've already said. It simply means keep the space between you and people who are outside of your home. And if people don't know what 2 meters is, spread your hands out. I will give you about that. So that's roughly the distance. So far, it's 2 meter rule that we're using in the UK. Other countries are not using it, as you've said. And I still believe this should be practical in South Sudan because we've got plenty of space, plenty of outdoor space. So that should be something we can manage. And therefore, that comes with the fact that you do not gather in groups, you avoid crowds so that you maintain the social distancing. But what are the requirements? What are other requirements of social distancing? You've beautifully told us about the isolation and quarantine. I just want to mention about shielding. There's also something what we call shielding. The shielding is sort of to keep for someone who is vulnerable to keep at home as much as possible so that they do not allow visitors or minimize the number of visitors in their home. Why is this? This is to keep them from getting the infection. So who are this group? These are the group you talked about who are having chronic obstructive airway diseases, people who are asthmatic, people who have got who are immune compromised. Now, the one thing is, if you are HIV positive, I just want to clarify this, and you are on treatment and you are well suppressed, in other words, you've been on treatment, your immunity is suppressed, you don't have a different outcome as in somebody who hasn't got HIV if you were to get coronavirus. So there's that shielding, yes, to protect the extremely vulnerable people from getting the coronavirus. And yes, indeed, social distancing does help to contain the disease if we can, and also to delay the spread of the disease. That is the essence of having the social distancing. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the old habits we have back home. Old habits. In other words, there's a lot of spitting. People go around spitting. People go around blowing their noses with their hands. And people go about greeting each other, shaking hands, and hugging. So these are things that would expose you to sort of the virus. If that person you're greeting or that person you're hugging has got the virus in them, so you're risking your health by doing this sort of greeting old habits. I think it's a high time we develop the kawaja hi or just I greet you. These are all very helpful measures, I believe, would help. And the other thing, again, around the social distancing that I'd like to talk about in the case or pertinent to us, the South Sudanese, because of our culture, is mourning the dead. When somebody died, people come in their numbers to mourn, which is good. It helps the people who are grieving. But at the same time, the dead, if they died out of coronavirus or they died of coronavirus, the body fluid, they're no longer breathing. So you cannot get any virus from them through their breathing. But the body fluids and the other material that's been around them, or the deformities, if you like, that has been around them, would have this virus. And coming in touch with them, and then going back to old habits, you've been crying, you've been mourning somebody, you've been touching this, and then before you could realize, you're wiping your eyes or you're wiping your nose, could expose you to the coronavirus. If the body of the disease has to be washed, the simplest one can do, or people should do, is either PPE, or which is personal protection equipment, which is wearing gloves and at least waterproof long gowns, long sleeve gown to try and prevent you from catching this virus. Um, yes, we, the Madi, have to rise and adopt ways that are alien, that are a little bit new to us, so that we can beat this coronavirus. I just wanted to add this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marcelina. If any other person in the panel would like to say something, they're welcome. Even to ask a question, they are welcome. Okay.
Hello.
If they are, hello.
I'm sure Rodrigo has a lot to say.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to be on this very important panel of discussion about coronavirus, COVID-19. And I wish to thank the viewers out there. In particular, my thanks goes to Modon, who has taken this great initiative of allowing us to continue talking about these important topics. And I would really wish this should be ongoing, because COVID-19 alone is such a huge evolving topic that requires constant information which could help our own people back home. For the sake of time, I will be very brief. I will give a short update of the situation in Uganda, especially along our borders. And then I'll also cite a brief case reference of what is happening in Tanzania, which I will believe might trigger a few questions in relation to the testing kids within our vicinity. Because if you look at our catchment area, our greatest concern is if we are to focus on Southern Sudan, Uganda, the current fears that in relation to coronavirus is that our porous borders, where people are able to move from one place to the other. I had a brief discussion with one of the doctors in Uganda today, and according to the doctor is that so far Uganda has got over 694 confirmed cases, and today alone confirmed case has been 8, and there is actually no death case reported, and those who have recovered is nearly 199 recovered cases. So far, the threats are, like Dr. George, like Dr. Robert said, the government had issued strict measures of, controlling movements. However, because of our economy, the neighboring countries along the Great Lakes region of Africa shares common borders in so many ways. So there is a movement of transit goods from one country to the other, and that so far has proven to be a threat because so many cases are being reported along the borders of Nimule, Kaya, and Afoji borders. So that is the report. But now my question really is, like Dr. Robert clearly elaborated about the symptoms of the COVID. And all of us, our experience tells us that it looks like symptoms of COVID are more or less the same symptoms of malaria. And our history tells us that oftentimes malaria, because of our geographical locations, oftentimes people have got, cough, flu, and many others. My question really is, how would our people really differentiate between the symptoms of malaria and the symptoms of COVID-19, because often there is fever, there is sometimes cough, and many others. And in specific reference to the question of Tanzania, there's a little bit of worry because there were a lot of political pronouncement by their president, the head of state. So far, there is 509 cases confirmed and 21 death cases and 183 recovered cases. But what is so interesting in Tanzania is that it looks like the question of lockdown has not been fully emphasized by the head of state, like in other neighboring countries. And the fear there is that, for example, there were certain tests which were carried, and samples were taken from pawpaws, which they call papaya, and a goat sample, which tested positive. Now, in reference to our own areas, honestly speaking, the fear is that do we really have genuine test kits? If you look, for example, of what's happening in Uganda, at the moment the country is registering that there is no any death case. But the question is it realistic? Is it true? If not, what are the issues really involved? Because, of course, even before COVID, we had several death cases. And I'm sure even in developed nations, whenever someone dies, there is high likelihood that people would quickly say it is COVID. If it might not be. But my questions are really that are our test kits realistic? If not, are we really registering the correct figures? And something like saying Uganda so far, all this period, have not registered any death case. Is it true? Is it realistic? And how will that propel our people in terms of positive living? Those are my concerns, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I would ask the doctors to answer the question, and then I cannot see any. There are no questions from the Facebook viewers from our own. But let me give this opportunity to Dr. Robert and Dr. Marcelina to answer the question. Thank you.
Who is having a go first, Robert or myself?
It's fine. You can go. It's okay.
Yes, it's very difficult, Rodrigo, isn't it, to know whether you're suffering from or your symptoms are pertinent to COVID-19 or they're due to malaria, because some of the symptoms may sort of mask or rather lie across border for the two infections. What I have in front of me is a table of other comparative symptoms. Don't ask me because I can't project it there. That can be similar. For instance, the COVID-19 can have certain common symptoms with flu and maybe allergic reaction and common cold. The first and foremost thing is headache. If you look at headache can happen in malaria. Somebody with malaria can get headaches. Fever, which is also something somebody with malaria can get. And the other things that may differentiate it from the COVID would be maybe other respiratory symptoms such as the cough and the irritation of the throat. Things like shortness of breath as well, because in malaria, particularly a small child may have a bit of difficulty breathing if they're running very, very high temperature. You can see that their breathing is quite labored, and that is due to fever. Unlike somebody who is elderly, somebody who is old. But remember, people have underlying problems. And these underlying problems will now sort of mask the symptoms. But my advice would be for somebody sitting in Africa, whether Uganda or South Sudan, if you do have symptoms, the first and foremost thing is to tease that out. Is it malaria? You've had malaria before. If you can get access to the malarial treatment and treat yourself, whilst you do the other measures that we've discussed about as to how about to go with the COVID-19 management, then at least that would save you some life. Because remember, this is a virus. It's got no treatment. It's just managing the symptoms. If you've got headache, you take paracetamol. If you've got again fever, paracetamol. Sore throat, you may take some remedies that will help your throat. In terms of the testing kits, now testing in itself, I don't know about the case of Uganda, but equally I don't know much about the testing in South Sudan. But but anecdotally, I was told that probably there's just one machine or maybe two machines in the whole of the country that is testing for this coronavirus. Now, how many millions of people do we have in South Sudan? So how long will this test take? If there's just one machine, it's such an overwhelming situation. Is their capacity to test each and everybody? So are the tests that are results coming out of there reliable, efficient, on spot, at the right time? These are questions I leave you to ponder yourselves because your guess may be as good as mine. So for us to move forward as to the testing bit, I believe resources have to be pulled towards the testing because it's important to know that if you've got the infection, you sort of you isolate yourself and you let family members be quarantined so that we curtail or we cut down the infection. I'll leave Robert to talk more about that, obviously from his own perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Marcelina. I think you really captured everything, especially how to differentiate between COVID and malaria. Most of the symptoms, they share the same symptoms. So I think the most important thing is now if you really feel these symptoms, you need to call the authorities or go to a testing center. And these days testing for malaria is so fast. They use strips. You may do in a nearby clinic, and while doing so, you should be able to protect yourself and others by wearing a mask. So I think it's important to do a quick test for malaria using those strips because most of these symptoms actually mask each other. They almost are the same, except that COVID will present with difficulty in breathing. And like what Dr. Marcelina said, in children, it's also difficulty in breathing with malaria, not only COVID. So yeah, this is quite tricky. So I don't know, like how the authorities in the health authorities in Uganda and South Sudan are operating, but I think if you feel that you have symptoms that are suggestive of COVID-19, it's very important to call or go yourself. Like in South Sudan, I think movement is not restricted, so you should be able to go. And as I had said, as you go to the hospital, be able to protect yourself. You might not be having the COVID, it might be malaria. So if you don't wear a mask or cloth-based mask, you might be exposing yourself. And also try to avoid crowding. So that is quite a tricky thing. Now, looking at the Tanzania thing where Popo, is it God's tested positive for COVID? I think it's a very difficult thing to talk about. Uh, there are other countries that have politicized COVID. When you look at even the United States, the president there didn't think COVID was a real thing. It could be the same thing in Tanzania. And these politicians are trying very much to protect the economy. For the case of Tanzania, I think I have seen videos for tourism, saying Tanzania does not have COVID, tourists are welcome. So it's a difficult situation. So I think it should depend on you as an individual. If you get the messages of prevention, make sure you're able to, because the moment you get it, it's a dangerous thing. For now, there is no treatment. It's just palliative care here and there to keep you alive. And if you have underlying conditions, your symptoms might be serious, you might need hospitalization, and you die. So if we are having politicians who speak to us without the help of science or medicine around, we should really be careful and stick to what other countries are doing, what the WHO, World Health Organization, is advocating. That's the most important thing. So the test kits, I think even here in the UK or in Italy, there were some rumors that some of these test kits are faulty. You see, and that was around about March and April. So there were test kits that were thought to be faulty. It could be the same case in Africa. It could not. So it's a very difficult thing. Probably countries should need to look into different companies that manufacture these test kits. That is what I can add for now.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Robert, and Dr. Marcelina. I also have been, asking this question: How long how long do people anticipate this coronavirus will be around, and would life really get to normal after this coronavirus? And how will life look like, post the coronavirus? Thank you.
Wow, that seemed to be interesting, isn't it? How long will coronavirus be around? And whether life will go back to normal. Life will go back to some degree of normality, but the normal you used to know, I don't think is the normal you will see anywhere near soon. Now, how long this will be around is a matter of trying to contain the disease. Unless the disease is contained, we are not able to have a normal life. So that is a matter of scientists working very hard to get either some kind of antiviral treatment to suppress or rather to suppress this infection, and also get a vaccination. These are the two answers that the two things that would help sort of bring life to some degree of normality if that's been realized. The other thing interesting I wanted to say about is Rodrigo. I don't know whether that's the same thing in Uganda. If I
Hello?
Is she offline now?
now
Hello?
as I was saying, if I were to go to Juba now and say I had fever and headache, if this coronavirus era and I gave my blood, I would be told I have malaria. Robert, you just worked in Juba quite recently. How trustworthy, how effective are the tests for malaria in Juba? Because almost everybody that's gone to the clinics, malaria typhoid. Malaria typhoid. You'd be lucky if you escape the typhoid. But malaria typhoid is the norm.
Yeah. Thank you. I think let me respond a bit about the reliability of tests, malaria tests in Juba. I think there is in Juba there's what we call the supplier-induced demand, especially in those clinics. So the supplier being the owner of the clinic, so they are trying to gain profits out of malaria tests, out of a positive malaria test, and out of a typhoid test. To be honest, in clinical practice, someone who comes walking to your clinic and then you carry out a test, and you don't have to treat this patient for typhoid, because patient suffering typhoid may not be coming walking, might be carried to your clinic, you see. And also the tests for typhoid are not specific. The tests that we use in South Sudan are those tests that are not specific for the typhoid. So it might be other bacteria, and then it's saying it is typhoid. And then any clinicians who say there's malaria and typhoid, I think this should be, you shouldn't trust such kind of clinician, because it's unlikely. There's no diagnosis that says malaria, typhoid. That is a boxed kind of things, and I think it is quackery, and people are trying to cheat communities about this. So I think the most reliable tests could be tests that are taken in government hospitals. I would think that they are a bit reliable, but in the clinics, not all clinics do this, but there are a lot of clinics that are profit driven, and they will of course tell you have malaria when you don't have. They will tell you have typhoid when you really don't have, and that is more common in those private clinics. So to respond on whether we are going to go back to the normal, I think with coronavirus, this is already the new normal. I think we need to appreciate this. There is going to be hand washing throughout, a little bit of social distancing where possible. People are, because until there is a definitive treatment and a vaccine against corona. As long as we do not have this is already the new normal. Let's embrace it, and let's try to protect ourselves from getting this coronavirus. It's that risk, really.
Thank you so much.
And if I'm to respond to the question of Modong, which says, what does the future hold for us in relation to the coronavirus? What is the after? I think that is a very big topic, which probably I would suggest for us to explore further in our next discussion. But briefly, what I can say is that probably it could be determined by us to whether there will be vaccines available. And unfortunately, most of you could have been aware that the world is actually looking for a testing ground for vaccines, which some theories had suggested that probably it should be in Africa, which to me is really something very, very sad to hear. And this is simply because I think, like I said earlier on, it will be determined of the availability of vaccines, how it's going to work. But I would think that could be a topic on its own for us to discuss in the next session.
Absolutely.
And I'm saying that because of issues to do with politics involved, race involved. It could even go tribal. It could even go, continental. So it's really a very big question, really, to talk about, topic to talk about.
Thank you, all of you. I can't see any questions from the Maniho, but I can see people thanking us for this presentation. People appreciating, and but I can't see any questions here. I'd like to ask Reverend Moy if he has any question to ask.
Yeah, thank you. I have listened to Dr. Robert, and the age bracket that he has mentioned And in Australia, there are children of 2 years and from 2 years to 10 in schools that have been tested and found positive. And so, I mean, even in this context, I have not yet, gotten a clear explanation as to what has gone wrong, And so I don't know whether Dr. Robert and Dr. Marcelina has any input in that, the age bracket, because the children that we have seen on the news are, I think, between the age of 2 to 10 years.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, it has been mentioned that children are out of that age bracket. So what happened? What has gone wrong?
Okay, thanks. I think that is a very important question. Uh, Coronavirus, I think we need to know that coronavirus affects any age. Anyone can get this virus, whether you're young or whether you're elderly. The difference is in the cause of the infection. The elderly develop severe symptoms. People with underlying conditions develop severe symptoms that can easily cause death. But the young people do not develop those severe symptoms that may cause death. When you look at the statistics around the world, they are children who get infected with the disease. But when you look at the deaths, this age group has the lowest death. Probably those who died had maybe some underlying conditions, maybe cardiac issues, heart issues that were not diagnosed at the childhood, and then that is how they get to die. So at this age group probably have some protective factors in them that does not cause them to die, but any age group can contract this infection. So we need to protect ourselves because we may not be knowing that we have underlying condition. Even these children, we might not be knowing that they have underlying condition. They may have the virus. They may get the virus from school and also transmit to us, the parents at home, or to their grandparents who are more dangerous. So this age group also gets the disease, but they are less likely to succumb and die from it because they may not even express other symptoms. But those with underlying conditions which we do not know may die. When you look at the statistics, it is clear that this age group has the least percentage of deaths. So let's pass out this message that any age group can get this disease, but the severity depends on whether you are over 60 years, whether you have underlying conditions. And there are a lot of people who have underlying conditions that they don't know. That is what I can add actually to that question. Maybe Dr. Marcelina has something to add.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The government lockdown, as a result, the lockdown has given rise to so many death cases. And this is simply because there are people who may not have had or who might have not contracted COVID-19, but because they wanted some medical or health care support, which could have warranted them to travel from one place to the other for proper management. But because of the lockdown, they were unable to do so. Others probably could have required certain medication that could have come from a longer distance to reach them, but they are unable to get them on time. We have had cases of expecting mothers who are bound to give birth, but because of the lockdown, they were unable to access uh, hospitals on time. And all this, among others, resulted to death. which cases seems to have outnumbered the cases of people who are believed to have died of COVID-19 in so many countries. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I think if I may go, Marcelina, would you
Yeah.
like to go? Or yeah, uh, I think that is an interesting question, and I think we can see that especially in economies like in Africa, where people have to struggle on their own to go find transport for medication, where people have to hustle every day to look for food. Uh, I think also people have to question about the lockdown strategies. The lockdown strategies will work when the government steps into making sure that they have ambulances and are able to provide health care to these people who may need to travel for their to collect their treatment, or where the government can step in to to provide food for communities that are most of the time hustle on daily day basis to provide food on their table. Otherwise, if these strategies are not in place, I think many people are going to die from lockdown related issue other than the virus itself. So governments, I think this is a policy issue. It's a very big debate. I think government needs to now look at the best strategies that they think they need to impose. Like in other countries where people have respect for themselves, like I think Sweden, there's no lockdown, but the infection rates may not be as more as here in the UK. So you see that, so it depends really, and it's something that is difficult to talk about. Probably, like you had said earlier, this could be a debate for another day, because there are people who argue that the lockdown will lead to deaths of so many people in such a way. So I really do not have a correct answer. This is a policy question, and there are pros and cons of that, and it's a huge debate. I think our message for today should be about us knowing this virus and how we can prevent it and make sure we don't allow it to spread in our communities and lead to a lot of deaths, whether you lock yourself in or whether you reduce that unnecessary movements. I think we should really focus on that. But of course, the total lockdown have repercussions, especially in economies that people have informal work, like in our community. People go to sell, people have to go and do casual labor to provide food on their table. That is really a very big debate, and I really do not have a specific answer for that. Maybe some of the members here may have something to add. Dr. Marcelina Modo or Pastor Moi might have something to say.
Mm.
I mean, I just went off, my internet connection went off, and I briefly went off. Probably I didn't hear the questions or the particular question. But in the case of lockdown, yes, different countries have done different things. Perhaps in the next future coming debates, we can elaborate much on that. The lockdown measures, for instance, were not strictly observed, or where lockdown was not done, say in South Korea. If you look at the statistics of South Korea is doing very well. If you look at German locked down very early, and German cases, even though they have a lot of positive cases, this is because they are testing each and everybody. The death rates are relatively low in Europe compared to, say, UK or any other, Italy or any other countries. Now, in the case of South Sudan, did we really lock down? Was there a lockdown? The lockdown was maybe probably the border bans are the ones that were more effective, because there were no traveling cross border. Just like you said, Rodrigo, some people who had certain ailments and certain illnesses that could have been sort of helped in various better sort of advanced medical care centers uh, lost their lives because they were not able to access the services. But in terms of people who had symptoms that are related to the coronavirus, because of the border lockdown, if you like, or ban of travel, they were not able to access travel. But if we look at the nitty of what is happening in the country, when I speak back home, the lockdown is not being observed, or rather, even the social distancing is not being observed. So, what are we trying to do? Are we really taking these things serious? Now, remember, for anything to happen, the politicians will say what they want to say. The health professionals and the scientists will advise you to the best of their ability. It takes the willpower of a man or a woman or the people to do what is recommended for them. And I think that at the moment is not happening. And that is where we're finding most of the difficulties. Even if there's no complete lockdown, you can do the other basic things that has been said: social distancing, washing your hands, the coughing properly, not spitting around for somebody to step on those, or kids to sort of eat from the ground and get that. A lot of things we can do. Not sort of crowding to go and mourn the dead. These kind of things we can do for ourselves, for as individuals, to try and cut down the number of coronaviruses that are affecting or infecting the community.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you to all of you. Uh, it's already coming to 2:30. We have spent a long time, and as we all, we have questions. We still have questions to ask. So, as Rodrigo said, this is something ongoing. There are a lot of unanswered questions, but we can't continue going on at this time unless there is something really burning somebody wants to say. I would go on and close our event for today. But if there's somebody, I'll give you people a chance. If there's somebody wants to quickly say before I conclude, I'll give them that chance. Thank you.
Can I just suggest something? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So because this is an ongoing platform whereby we can come and ask questions and interact, for those people who may not be able to ask from the or from wherever they are, what they can do is they can write the questions on the page, and we from the panel will come round to answer these questions as time goes by. Whether it's today or tomorrow, they will get the answers. So my suggestion is they can leave the questions on the page.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's taken. I'm sure people will do that. I'd like to thank everybody who has attended this live presentation. And I know the presentation was in English, but nothing can stop you from asking question in Madi or in Arabic. And by the way, Dr. Roberts is a Kuku, so he speaks Bari language, Kuku and Bari, all the.
Yes.
He speaks. So if you have any question, even in Bari, you can, post it. Coronavirus has no boundaries. That's why the boundaries are broken. That's why people are coming together. For me, I would wish that there'll be more collaboration, more cooperation between, our professionals in diaspora and our professionals back home, because the professionals in diaspora have been exposed to the coronavirus before those of us who are back home, so they might know something a little bit more. And even the people back home might know something. They might have questions, or they might know things which they could get answers from if there was that collaboration and if there was that working together. That's what I would like to see in the future. Um, with this, I'd like to thank everybody who has come here today. manzo anyokosi aniba ogani anyevuke ndorasi olwe ndorisi onu anzokosi tapa no ndori kuniru ningani ge nozori. This is the starting. This is the baseline. We have laid the grounds. We have done an introduction. You can come and listen to this presentation again and again, and you can get that knowledge. Knowledge doesn't rot, and knowledge is very important. With this coronavirus, we know the most important thing is knowledge. The most important thing is knowledge. So, and knowledge is of no use if you don't put it into use. So the next thing is putting the knowledge you have into use. We know we have to wash hands, but knowing that we have to wash hands is not good enough if we don't do it. I'm going to say it in Mali again. Ofu and Yesura Mamadi, Ofu Nidi, Leni and Odi, Wala Diado, Leni Di and you, Anyeri, Leni Di and you and Baibuge. Then Ningara, ni Baibuge ko, Biro Bimoringa Director. Au situ, Ofu Anyeri Lendoli, Ganyeri Lendoli, and Grafiti Buge. Ajo baku twedi ajo kolulu dakalaja karaja rero kosi kidi ado da lori de kumtezi da mudina lo sonado asidu okolu suru telefon si ya modi de ninde koro mere ga ku dilaru koro para ba telefon na kazi andani asi manjo kosi de ado odu ni lokora de ake mulre ado seri nusto esukani yani ala mungani hapa na wagoki dia donu lambora sai manira di odu atiri gaya ya do ko ya do kena nini asi do ko dia kera ani rira lazi ani ari anizi ongo amako amako odu zira tengwi lazi anyazile pi dele a presentation ede dele a ie anjo ko si yo adu di mamodo i ba panel gere pi Dr. Marcelina, Mr. Rodrigo, Ongo Buna Madi, Reverend John Moy, Presenta Madi Andori, Dr. Robasi. And so, of course, Avo Ezorora. Thank you so much, and bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thanks
Thank you.
a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.